Watching the police officer hand my mother a written trespassing warning while her husband sat helplessly in the passenger seat of their parked U-Haul was, without a doubt, the most peaceful moment of my entire life. For years, she had convinced everyone I was a delusional, jealous liar who destroyed our family, but as she stood in my driveway homeless, humiliated and begging the officers to let her inside my house, the truth was finally undeniable. The scared, silent teenager she had allowed her husband to torment was long gone. In her place was a woman who owned her own home, knew her own worth, and was finally closing the door on them forever. But to understand how we ended up on my porch with red and blue lights flashing in the neighborhood and why I felt absolutely no guilt watching them drive away with nowhere to go, you need to know what I walked away from 8 years ago. My mother never believed me when I told her what my stepfather was doing behind closed doors. The psychological games, the constant emotional torment, the way he would systematically isolate me. I told her everything when I was 12. She slapped me across the face and called me a liar. I tried again at 13. She told me I was just jealous of her happiness. She said I was desperate for attention because I couldn't stand that she finally had a real family. Her words. She looked at me like I was the rough draft she was trying to erase. When I broke down and told her again at 14, she dragged me to a therapist, but she didn't take me there to get help. She sat in the leather chair, cried hysterically, and told the doctor I had a vicious habit of making up stories to ruin her marriage. The therapist believed her. Why wouldn't he? She cried so convincingly. By the time I was 15, she gave me an ultimatum. If I mentioned my stepfather's behavior one more time, she would send me to live with my biological father, a man who hadn't even bothered to call me since I was 3 years old. I stopped telling her after that. I stopped speaking to her entirely unless it was absolutely necessary. My stepfather knew he had one. He wore this quiet, arrogant smirk around the house, knowing he was untouchable. The night I turned 16, I packed 2 duffel bags. When I told my mother I was moving out, she didn't try to stop me. She didn't even ask where I would sleep. She just watched me pack like I was a problem finally solving itself. My stepfather stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed over his chest. "Good luck out there," he sneered. "Let's see who believes your little stories now." My half-siblings, his kids, stood behind her. They were 9 and 7. They didn't understand why their older sister was walking out into the dark. I couldn't explain it to them. I just walked out and never looked back. The next few years were pure survival. I couch-surfed for a year, begging friends' parents to let me sleep in their basements so I could finish high school. I worked 2 minimum wage jobs through community college, sleeping in my beat-up sedan between shifts. I eventually transferred to a state school, got a degree in accounting, and landed a corporate job. I climbed the ladder, got promoted, and saved every single penny. By the time I was 23, I bought a small, beautiful condo with a balcony that faced a quiet park. It was just me, just mine. I had built a life so safe and so far from that toxic house that sometimes I forgot it even existed. Then, my phone rang last month. I didn't recognize the number, so I let it go to voicemail. When I listened to the message, my stomach dropped. It was my mother. It was the first time I had heard her voice in 8 years. I called her back against my better judgment. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask how I was. Her voice was frantic and demanding, exactly like I remembered. Your stepfather had a massive stroke, she blurted out. He's partially paralyzed on his left side. He can't work anymore. The medical bills drained everything and the bank foreclosed on the house. We have to be out by the end of the week. I sat at my kitchen island, staring out at the park. I waited for more. An apology, an acknowledgement of the 8 years of silence, but nothing came. We need somewhere to stay, she finally said. Why are you calling me? I asked, my voice completely steady. Your brother and sister both said you have a guest room, she replied, sounding irritated that I was even questioning her. Tyler's apartment is too small and Chloe is in dorms. You are the only one with space. We are going to need you to clear out the guest room so we can put a medical bed in there for your stepfather. She wasn't asking. She was ordering me after 8 years of treating me like garbage. She truly believed she still held authority over my life. No, I said quietly. There was a dead silence on the line. Excuse me. The answer is no. You and your husband are not moving into my home. Do not contact me again. I hung up and blocked the number. For 2 weeks, I heard nothing. I thought that was the end of it. I assumed she had finally realized that the bridge between us was burned to ash. I underestimated her entitlement. Last Saturday morning, I was drinking coffee on my balcony when a massive U-Haul truck backed into my driveway. My heart spiked. I watched as my mother hopped out of the driver's seat. Through the windshield, I could see my stepfather sitting in the passenger side, looking frail, angry, and gripping a cane. She marched up to my front door and started pounding on it. Open the door, she yelled. I know you are in there. The old version of me, the terrified teenager, would have panicked. I would have hidden, cried, or opened the door to negotiate, but I wasn't that girl anymore. I set my coffee mug down, picked up my phone, and dialed non-emergency dispatch. I calmly explained that estranged relatives were attempting to force their way into my property and refusing to leave. I didn't engage. I didn't scream through the door. I just waited. 10 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up behind their U-Haul. I stepped out onto my porch, leaving the door locked behind me. My mother immediately started performing for the officers. She turned on the waterworks, gesturing wildly at the truck. Officers, thank God you're here, she cried. My daughter is having a mental breakdown. My husband just had a stroke. We lost our home, and she's trying to lock us out of our own family property. We just need to get his medical equipment inside. The officer looked at me. I didn't look crazy. I was wearing cashmere loungewear, sipping a fresh cup of coffee. Ma'am, is this your property? The officer asked me. Yes, officer, I replied calmly. I am the sole owner of this condo. I have the deed in my safe if you need to see it. These people are estranged relatives. I have not spoken to them in 8 years. I explicitly told her on the phone 2 weeks ago that she was not welcome here. I want them removed from my property immediately. My mother's face flushed with pure rage. The mask slipped. You ungrateful little brat, she screamed, lunging toward the steps. After everything we did for you, you owe us. He is a sick man. You can put us on the street. The officer immediately stepped between us, holding his hand up to her chest. Ma'am, step back right now. If she owns this property and wants you gone, you have to leave. If you don't get back in that truck, I'm arresting you for trespassing and disturbing the peace. My stepfather rolled down the window of the U-Haul. His speech was slurred from the stroke, but the venom in his eyes was exactly the same as it was when I was a kid. Tell them we're family. He spat at me. I walked down the steps, stopping right behind the officer. I looked directly into my stepfather's eyes. Let's see who believes your little stories now, I said. His face went completely pale. He recognized his own words from the night he threw me out into the dark. My mother was sobbing uncontrollably now, realizing that her tears held no power here. The police weren't therapists she could manipulate. They were the law, and the law was on my side. The officer wrote out a formal criminal trespass warning and handed it to her. He stood in my driveway with his hand resting on his duty belt, watching closely as my mother climbed back into the driver's seat of the U-Haul. The engine sputtered to life. I watched the man who terrorized my youth and the woman who let him do it reverse out of my life, completely broke and with nowhere to go. I went back inside, locked my deadbolt, and finished my coffee. Blood doesn't make a family, and the house is only a home when you decide exactly who is allowed inside.